breakup that talked about simple machines, how they work, and what they were, and even showed us some examples. But there was a second part of the question. So far, Andre still has $4,700, Ronnie has won $5,000, and James has won $3,000. The second part of the question is, what are forces? Forces are pulls or pushes. Even though you cannot see them, you can feel them. Like when you swim, you can feel water pushing against you. The bigger the push or pull, the more the object moves if it moves. If an object is soft enough, the pushes and pulls can smash or stretch the object, like with Play-Doh.
Okay.
When pushing with one hand and pulling with the other, you can twist some objects, like when you twist the lid off a water bottle. When an object hits another object, it shifts its force to the object that it hit. An example of this is when a bowling ball hits a pin. Its force shifts to the pin, which makes the pin fall. If the object is heavier than another object and it is thrown at the same speed as the first object, the heavier object will shift more force. Using the bowling ball example, if you throw a heavier ball at the same speed as the first ball, the pin will be more likely to fall when hit by the heavier ball. The speed also matters because if the object is thrown at a faster speed, it will shift more force than if it is thrown slower. If you throw a bowling ball at a faster speed, it will also have a more likely chance of knocking down a pin. Gravity is one type of force. Gravity pulls everything towards the center of the object's gravity, just like Earth pulls on you. The reason why you don't sink into the center of the Earth, though, is because the ground is exerting force upwards on you. This is called normal force. An example of this is when there's an object on the table. The object does not fall through the table unless it goes off the table. The table no longer has control of the object, so it falls to the ground. Another example of gravity is the sun's gravitational pull. If the sun didn't have gravitational force, our planets would all fly off into space. You weigh less on the moon because the moon is smaller, so it has less gravitational force. The moon's gravitational pull is around 6 times less than the Earth's. An apple on Earth would weigh 2 pencils on the moon. Friction is a type of force that either tries to stop things from moving or slows things down when they are moving. At first, when you try to move an object, static friction kicks in. Static friction is stronger than sliding friction. It tries to stop you from moving the object. Once you are able to move the object, it becomes much easier because now only sliding friction is trying to slow the object. Sliding friction is a force that slows down an object once it is moving and pushing against another object. An example of sliding friction is when you push a block. It slows down because of sliding friction. Rolling friction is friction that slows things down that are moving, that are round. This type of friction is weaker than static and sliding friction. It is weaker because it is easier to move objects that are round than objects that are not round. An example of this is a bowling ball. When you roll the ball, it is harder to stop it because of its round shape, so it hits the pins without stopping. The weakest type of friction is fluid friction. It is the weakest type of friction because fluids are more slippery than solids, but a solid can become more slippery when fluid is added to the solid. Fluids are not as dense as solids, but there are exceptions of some fluids that are heavier than their solid form. For example, water. Inertia is a principle that says that if an object is moving, it will keep moving if nothing stops it. Like for example, the golf ball that was hit on the moon by Alan Shepard. Since there was barely anything stopping it, it continued to go for 2 to 2.5 miles before it stopped. Air resistance is a type of force. In fact, it is a special type of friction force that acts upon objects that move through air. Air resistance gets stronger when you go faster. If you don't have a streamlined vehicle, you will experience more air resistance than if you had a streamlined vehicle. An example of air resistance is when you parachute from the sky. What slows you from falling is the parachute because it has a wide surface area, so more air pushes on it. Therefore, it slows your fall. Water resistance is similar to air resistance, except fluid is trying to stop you. Water resistance is also a type of friction, except it is stronger than air. If you have a point on the front of the object, it will be easier to make it go faster in water. If you don't, you will have water friction pushing against you. A pointy edge makes it easier to move through water because the pointy edge splits the water like a knife, so the boat can move more smoothly, like some Formula One cars and rocket ships. The link between simple machines and forces is that simple machines lower the amount of force trying to stop you to make your work easier. Like a pulley, there are 2 or more wheels. It divides the force needed to lift the object by 2. 3 would mean the amount of force is divided by 3, etc. Eventually, if you keep adding wheels, you can lift very heavy objects. That is right, and Andre wins $2,000. This was the last question for this episode, and so Andre wins with $6,700. I am Patrick Williams, and this is Jeopardy!
Good job.